So I wanted to do a video about some of the cultural differences that I have experienced since being here in South Korea. I hope you can hear me. I feel like I'm fully ninjaed up here. I'm gonna find somewhere to perch so that I can take my mask off away from people. While I'm here in this beautiful park, I just want to tell you a little bit about it because it's kind of been a bit of a safe haven, an escape for me. It's called Central Park. It's in Songdo and it's beautiful. I'll show you around a little bit. And it's just really serene, it's really clean, and at the weekend you'll often see families here exploring. There's a few people here. Yeah, and it's just a nice place to go and chill. Okay, I think this will have to do as a place. It's actually busier once I got like more central in the park, of Central Park. It actually got a lot busier, so this is probably just going to be the best place for it. I have prepared a list. So there are 10 main cultural differences or themes that I've identified since being here. They're just my opinion or like what I've observed. I think it probably differs in the regions you are. I'm obviously in a big city, so maybe things are going to be slightly different to where it's maybe a bit more traditional down south or like in the more rural areas. The main thing, I guess the biggest thing, is the hierarchy, and that's defined by age. Well, age and status. It's the way of law here. Like, if you're older than me, you're boss. Like, elders are law. When I was at orientation, one of the lecturers was telling us about a story where he witnessed two older guys arguing on the tube, and they were arguing over a seat. And the way they resolved their argument was like, well, how old are you? Get your ID out. And they compared IDs. One of them was like a few months older. The guy that was youngest was like, sorry, this seat's yours. And it was just resolved like that. I couldn't believe it, like when he was telling us about this. But yeah, it's definitely like the way here. My most extreme experience of it was being on the tube in Seoul, and my friend and I were chatting, and I don't think we were being that loud. Like, I guess my voice can raise, and like so can hers, but it didn't feel like arrogantly loud. And an older guy came up and was like, volume, no talking. I was just like, what? I used to think I had respect for my elders, like being in the UK, but now I'm here, I'm like, yeah, like we have none. They're the more extreme examples, but then they're also integrated into other things. So for example, when you have dinner, like when you go out for dinner with a family or with friends, the youngest, like, I don't know, say you're at a Korean barbecue, the youngest cooks the meat and serves the meat to everyone else, and the youngest pours the drinks as well. And typically, like say you're drinking soju, which is like a nicer tasting vodka, it comes in like a beer bottle. Say you're all drinking that, like you don't really stop drinking until the eldest has finished. Another thing is you only really talk to people or meet people through introduction, so someone else introduces you. So when I first got here, I thought people were really rude, because I was smiling at people, waving at people, like saying hello, and they were like either just staring at me, and it's really hard because we've all got masks on, so you're just seeing the eyes. They were either just like staring at me like or they were like tutting, they like to be or they say like weiguk, like under their breath, which is foreigner. And then when I got to understand this cultural thing of like you don't really talk to a stranger, like, and I guess there's a little bit of that in the UK, like if you're on the tube you don't like you it's kind of eyes down, you don't really engage with one another. But here, just like in general life, I think that's something that probably is very different to the States as well. I think they're kind of quite good at striking up small talk and stuff with each other. But yeah, here you don't talk to somebody if they're a stranger. Only if you were introduced to somebody would you then start talking to them. Okay, this is a slightly harder one to explain. It's more of a theme, like more so than anywhere else I've ever been, and definitely more so in the UK. It's the generational divide, I guess, but it goes deeper than that. It's the clash of like traditional values with modern. I've really noticed it here more than anywhere else I've ever been. Like, it's so prominent. I think anyone that comes to Korea will have the same experience. For example, the traditional ways, the kind of hierarchy, the humbleness, the kind of self-preservation, the kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but like the traditional ways here, I guess you could say like they're kind of embedded in Confucianism and collectivism, that like looking out for everyone else, like being a big like family support. It's clashing with the younger generation that have been brought up in this really kind of techie age. You know, South Korea has the fastest internet in the world. Its economy's booming, and I think the older ways are kind of clashing with the newer ways in a sense. And you even see that in the architecture. Like you get these really modern buildings. I mean, I'm in a newly built area. Songdo hasn't actually been around for longer than 2 years, so this is a bit of a different example here. But like as a general rule, like if you're in Seoul, the capital, and you're looking around, you get these like really small Hanok villages, and then you've got this like backdrop of skyscrapers, a bit like there. The generational gap, or like the traditional versus the modern, and there's a real like shift from collectivism to individualism. So in Western culture and our culture in the UK, we're very individualistic. So it's, you know, hashtag you do you, hashtag like you can't love anyone else until you love yourself. It's all about that kind of like within and internal, which also has its pros and cons. Traditionally here, because of the like Confucian background, there's always been more emphasis on collectivism. So one example of that is traditionally like people don't live alone or eat alone, and I think when foreigners started coming here on their own and doing those things, they were getting weird stares, and it's getting a bit more accepted now, and people would be expected to live with their parents until they got married. So it's kind of like you're always living with someone. Whereas now, like with all the skyscrapers, they're all full of these like 1-bedroom apartments, and it's just a lot more, or it's getting that way where it's a lot more accepted to be alone, to eat alone, to live alone. But I'm still seeing that tension of it not being completely accepted by the older generations. The fourth thing, I would say, like food is the language. Like food is Korean language here. It's how they socialize. It's how you're introduced to people, so you may be like introduced via a meal. When I first got here, I did my orientation training with Epic, and then I got on a bus. Like all of us that were going to Incheon got on a bus, and we were just plonked in front of our co-teacher over this massive lunch, and I was just like, it feels weird to me being like, this is the first time I've met you and I'm just eating with you, but it's the norm here. Maybe it's the norm in England and I'm just a recluse. People eat out here a lot more than they do in the UK. I would say they eat out more than they eat in, especially like in the studio flats like mine. Like the kitchen isn't really kitted out for like full cooking. I have 2 rings, like hob rings, no oven, and a microwave, and that's it. And I have friends that have just 1 ring and no microwave and stuff like that. So it's just not really kitted out for that. And also it's cheaper to eat out typically than to cook. Groceries are really expensive here. And I've heard that the markets are a good place to buy fruit and veg, but they're just not open at the moment because of Corona. So maybe once the market's open and I can get local fruit and veg, it might make the shopping cheaper. You use 2 hands to do like everything. That's an exaggeration. To take change or to give cash, you use 2 hands. Like if you just put 1 hand out like this, it's considered rude. Whereas if you kind of take your change like this, that's considered the proper way. And when you're pouring drinks, you hold your wrist, so you kind of pour like this. And if you're accepting the drink, you hold your drink like this, so you're always kind of supporting. It's kind of considered rude just to put the 1 hand out. I have no idea why. I should find out why. Maybe someone can tell me why. And in a similar vein, like my next point, like pointing is considered rude. So I didn't realize, like, I think pointing is like, you're probably thinking like, yeah, don't point at people, that is rude. But like even just being like that, or like, oh, you like come here, like I keep realizing like put it away, and I'm like, put the finger away, because I keep forgetting. And traditionally, like if they want you to, like if they're like trying to summon you, they put their hand out like this and they do this. Which feels really unnatural to me, but like obviously it's as natural to them as pointing is to us. So it's sort of like, hey you, come here. This one's more of a theme than like a specific thing. But like politeness hasn't translated. Like my politeness as a Brit, like Brits are obviously like the stereotype is that we're very polite. The people here are very polite, and people in the UK are very polite, but the way that they're polite is different. So they don't always translate. So for example, the number of times I say thank you. So the way to say thank you in Korean is like 감사합니다, and I say that like whenever someone does something for me. So if someone serves me my food, or like if I'm paying and I'm leaving, I will say 감사합니다, like thank you. And often they're a bit like, you've said that already like a few times, like once was more than enough. But I think it's a very British thing to be like, thank you, like for everything that's done for us. They're not thinking like, oh, she's really polite, they're just thinking she's a bit odd, I think. Another area where like my politeness hasn't really translated is holding doors open for people. So if someone's directly behind me, or like I'm directly behind them, like you hold the door open, right? Like they're literally like this far from you. No, not here. Like everyone's in their own world when it comes to that. I actually got a bruise here in my first week, where the door was just slamming into me and I was like putting my arm there to stop it. I had this massive bruise here where it happened so many times. But they're not doing that to be rude or like off with you or anything. It's just not a thing here. And you know, the ways that they are polite, it's the like respecting the elders, like keeping to yourself, that sort of thing. Sharing food. It's just a different way of being polite. So both cultures are polite, but the way they do it's very different. The last 3 points are more work based. So I actually haven't taught any children in the school yet. I mentioned that earlier. I'm just going into my 4th week of working from home, so the only thing I'm doing at the moment is lesson planning, and then I submit what I've done each day to my co-teacher, and sometimes she'll give me feedback, sometimes she won't. But the hierarchy is so strict. So just like the hierarchy with age, you have like hierarchy with status as well. So if I went above my co-teacher, big no-no. Like she would probably be very, very unhappy with me if I did that. You don't go above people. You talk to the person directly, like above you or like next to you. And then if it's something that needs to go to the principal, like if it's only the principal that can answer your question, has to go to a co-teacher, your co-teacher's vice principal, the vice principal's principal. Like there's no like efficient right like it's just a no-go. The other thing is it's a very need to know basis, or like a last to know situation with working. So for example, like I was due to go into the school for a school meeting on Friday. I was messaging my co-teacher like, are we going in tomorrow? This was like 7 p.m. on Thursday, and she messaged me at like 8 p.m. and she was like, oh no, we're not going in tomorrow. I was just like, okay, thanks. Again, that's not her being impolite or rude or off with me or anything. It's just it's just not thought of. Like, I don't know, like I am a very thoughtful person, so if any action or like decision that's made, my immediate thought is like, who's this going to affect around me? Who do I need to update? Whereas that thought process I don't think happens as naturally here. And that's not a criticism, like as a general rule, like they're a lot more laid back here, and I think that's the positive of it. Like I'm very uptight and like I want to know the rules. I want to know, like, you know, I've asked for my class timetable and they're like, we haven't done it yet, and I'm like, well, we're all off, like why don't we just get ahead of the game? And that's just not the way here. It's sort of like, yeah, we'll do it when we need to do it. We'll find out when we need to find out. You know, we'll change our plans when we need to change our plans. It's all very chill, and you definitely see that in the people. Like, for example, there's no panic buying in Korea, at least that I'm aware of. And that actually does go into my last point, the atmosphere of people, like the general personalities and the vibes that you get from people. They're much more relaxed. Not very loud or like aggressive. People are just much more relaxed and calm and chilled out about things. So for example, like with the whole corona thing, like people are just sort of doing as they've been asked and just waiting for updates. And they're like, you know, when I need to change my plans, or like when I need new information, I'll get it like 5 minutes before. And it's really translated, like there's been no panicking, no chaos, no anarchy here at all. they're just pretty chilled out people. Like, they work hard, but you know, I think they have some really like grounded morals within them, and I think that just translates into then how they work in society. So they're the main observations that I've noticed. I hope they make sense. I hope they haven't been rude to anyone. Like, my intention has like not been to offend at all. It's merely like observation. Like, that's one of the big reasons I've come here. Like, I knew it was going to be culturally very different, and I wanted to experience that, and being able to do this video and like share that is really special to me. So I hope that translates, and not just like I'm being really ignorant or anything like that. There's one similarity that I've noticed more that like I can culturally identify with Korea than the US or maybe other like Western countries, is there's a humbleness and a shyness to people here that I can identify with. They're not braggers. They don't necessarily celebrate when they're doing something good or their achievements. They're very shy. They might be able to speak English really, really well to you, but they'll be shy too. And that's something that I can really identify with. Like, as a Brit, like, we're not braggers. Like, typically, we all know one bragger, but like typically, like, you know, we're not ones to be like, oh, I've done this and this and this, and like I've been here, here and here. We're quite like, you know, like just kind of, I don't know, we're quite reserved in that way. I've really noticed that here as well. I said to my co-teacher, like, I thanked her for all her help, and she was like, and I was like, I think she just felt a bit awkward about like the praise I was giving her. And I've heard that like that will come into play a lot with the children as well. Like, Korean children, much more than any other like set of children that you're teaching, will be a lot shyer. So the big aim teaching Korean children will be less about getting them fluent and nailing the grammar and being the best English speakers they could possibly be, and more about just getting them comfortable and taking away that fear of practicing and fear of failure. So I'll keep you updated on that bit as well, but that was just one similarity that I've seen, and it's really nice to have that. And then one funny thing, less of a cultural difference, but a difference nonetheless. My co-teacher, bless her, was looking up YouTube videos about England, and she told me the next day, and she was like, you have keys for everything, like for your house. I was like, yeah, we have keys everywhere. She was like, wow, that's so strange. Because here, keys are just not a thing. Like, well, not a padlock to be seen as far as I'm aware. But, you know, to go in your house or your flat or to open a shop, it's all keypad. It's all done electronically. So she was really fascinated by that, and I found that really interesting. I hope that was interesting to kind of see some of the differences that I've been experiencing. Obviously, it's a big reason why I'm here. We've been asked not to socialise for 15 days, so that means no eating out and meeting people for the next few weeks, which is a little bit rubbish, but you know, when the sun is shining, you can still go out for a walk. I can't complain. Peace and love, everyone. Bye.